We can make this feel so much better by just throwing some technology at it.
You want to make sure that whatever you're introducing to your attendees is going to improve the experience and not hinder the experience. There's a few things you have to look at when you're trying to implement technological change, especially. It's, what is your demographic of your attendees?
Welcome everybody. Today we are discussing Event Access 2.0, Elevating Attendee Check-in Experiences. I'm Bob Toovey, founder of Event Planning News, and together with my expert guest, we're diving into the forefront of event innovation, exploring how cutting-edge technology is reshaping the way we welcome and engage attendees. As you know, technology is changing traditional check-ins. It's transforming the event industry experience for attendees. However, that could all change now that AI technology has been brought into the mix. And will AI reshape the attendee experience? And will we lose something if we do? To help explore these topics and answer your questions, please welcome Tavar James, Global Head of Field, Event and Partner Marketing at Riskified.
Thanks, Bob. Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining us. I have about 15 years of events experience, started my career in hospitality and worked my way through a bunch of different brands, different groups, different productions, to now working in corporate event planning in the tech field. So very happy to be here and talk about event attendee check-in experiences and answer some of your questions.
Great. Okay, so thank you for that. I'm going to start with some questions on my own, and later towards the end, we will invite you, the audience, to type into the chat box your questions for Tavar, and we'll go through them. So let's start with, how does the integration of advanced technology in event check-in impact attendee satisfaction?
I mean, first and foremost, if you take a step back, the check-in experience it's the first touch point that most people have when they attend an event. And so I think a lot of organizers are realizing that there needs to be a little bit more of an emphasis on the arrival and check-in experience. But I think that technology is going to have an impact in the same way that technology has an impact in just about everything. It's either going to be well received and welcomed, or it's going to come with a level of resistance. The reality of it is that the entire world is not ready for the bullish innovation of technology, for lack of better terms. And so I think it's going to be really important for organizers to find that sweet spot between what's necessary for them to make sure that their arrival and check-in experience is efficient from a technological standpoint, but also what's comfortable for their attendees. Change is difficult for a lot of people. There's always a learning curve when it comes to adopting new technologies. And so you want to make sure that whatever you're introducing to your attendees is going to improve the experience and not hinder the experience or make the experience more difficult. And so organizers are going to have to figure out what that sweet spot looks like.
So there is that tendency to say, we can make this feel so much better by just throwing some technology at it, but you can't do it for the sake of it. It's got to have a reason. It's got to be
absolutely
something that improves the experience. So with that in mind then, I mean, what sort of challenges are event organizers facing when it comes to transitioning from the traditional check-in methods to using the latest technologies? How can they overcome those challenges?
I think a lot of organizers or planners are facing the difficulty of what's enough, how much change is enough, and what change is necessary. There's a few things you have to look at when you're trying to implement technological change, especially. It's, what is your demographic of your attendees? Is it an older crowd? Is it a younger crowd? Is it a mix of both? And then what technology is actually going to fulfill the purpose and elevate the event and not just be an add-on just to be an add-on? There are some technologies that do this very well. They're very user-friendly, no matter what the demographic is, no matter the age bracket of your audience. The technology is very user-friendly. And then there's some technology that does require a little bit more of a tech savvy mindset. And so there's going to be a need for planners and organizers to really have a very thorough RFP process, vet the proper vendors that can really bring value to their event from a technological standpoint. And again, as I said before, not necessarily hinder or create blockers in the arrival experience. I know for a fact that I've been to a few events where there's been technology introduced, but you can tell the technology was introduced just to make the event look a little bit more advanced and savvy and special, but it really didn't help me in any way. It didn't really improve my arrival experience. It just gave me something to do. And I think that sometimes can be more of an annoyance to your attendees versus something that makes them go, wow. So I think one of the biggest challenges is going to be figuring out the perfect product or the perfect solution that's going to really appeal to my audience based off of their demographic, based off of what they're used to from previous events, based off of what the industry norm is. There's been many times I've attended events where, you'll hear attendees attendees say, oh, I didn't have to do this at so-and-so event. Why are you guys making me do this here, right? And so you're going to have to find that sweet spot. And it's one of those crawl, walk, run situations. You don't want to introduce too much at once. It's going to be something that you need to slowly introduce change to your audience so that way it's not like a culture shock or what I like to call a tech shock when they arrive.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing harder than trying to change the habits of a group. They're already used to doing things certain ways. So if you've just taken the latest shiny bit of technology, thrown it in there,
Yeah.
thinking that'll be brilliant, they'll be impressed, but you've just made things so much harder because it's something that they're not used to.
And I think a big part of it is also the security behind it, right? There's
Yeah.
still a lot of people that are very nervous about digital face check-in and, fingerprints and anything that gives us access to their personal information or even, face recognition or, optic recognition, anything like that, people are still a little nervous about. And so that's another big challenge that planners are going to have to overcome is what is that comfortable spot where I, give my attendees the confidence in how I'm collecting this information, how I'm retaining this information, but also what am I doing to dispose of this information? And so I know that, for example, when I was trying to plan a 2,000 person event at the very tail end of COVID, and I had to introduce on-site testing, that was something that was very uncomfortable for all of my attendees. And some of my attendees, when they got on site before they were able to register, they had to take an on-site COVID test. And it was very uncomfortable for a lot of them. And a lot of them wanted to know, like, what are you doing with this information? How is your vendor disposing of my information? And so I think that same concept and that same mindset applies to when you're introducing new technology. What are you doing with their personal information? How are you retaining of that information and how are you disposing of it? And so that's going to be a big challenge for planners to overcome as well.
I think you've actually almost sort of addressed my next question in a way, because the thing that needs to be discussed, and I don't think there's enough discussion around it, is the privacy issues. What happens to your data after an event? Does a third-party company have possession of it? So my next question was going to be, how can facial recognition revolutionize, change, improve the security aspect of event check-ins?
I don't know if it's going to necessarily revolutionize it or change the security. I think it's only going to, again, it's going to raise more questions. It's going to give planners more checks and balances that they have to put in place to make sure that people feel safe. Believe it or not, people are much more comfortable with just typing in their name and printing out a name badge versus putting their face up to a screen and having their picture taken. One feels a little bit more safe than the other. And so I don't know if facial recognition is going to necessarily revolutionize the security aspect of event check-ins. I do think it's going to force us all to be a lot more thorough in how we're collecting data, protecting data, and then disposing of that data after an event. Do I think it's going to expedite the check-in process for events? Absolutely. I mean, you go to the airport now and you use facial recognition, and you see how much quicker it is than any of the other lines. For example, I just flew out of LaGuardia Airport on Thursday, and I have TSA pre-check, but the digital facial recognition line was going the quickest, and it literally was a fourth of the time for clear, right? And so I think it does expedite the process. It does make it a lot more a less stressful process. But in the back of your head, you're also thinking, okay, what are these people doing with my face? What happens when I pass this security checkpoint? So again, it's a very sensitive topic to many. It's a very exciting topic to many. Where we as planners have to figure out that middle ground, that soft spot that makes it comfortable for everybody.
I think it may be a little bit more acceptable when it comes to airport security checks.
Yep.
Mainly because it's been slowly introduced, but you also have an idea of, well, it's an airline, it's a government interaction with all of that, so it must be safe. So you're more comfortable going through it.
Correct.
But if you're at an event and you're not quite sure who the organizer is, but you're happy with why you're attending, and then you've got facial, and then, I can see there being more concerns.
And, we as planners have to brush up on our security and compliance knowledge, right? We're going to have to start to invest courses, not only for ourselves, but for our teams. So that way we understand, how is this information managed and how do we communicate this information to our attendees, not only verbally, but on our registration websites, on our e-blast communications before an event, on our e-blast communications after an event. We need to brush up on our knowledge to make sure that we're making sure people feel safe when they take advantage of these new technological ways of checking into an event or registering for an event.
I think it's the same concerns we should have regarding email list and registration data. I mean, it's all part of the same thing, really. It's just being extended into the real world a little bit more. Okay, well, I mean, so facial recognition can speed things up a little bit, but we are still used to QR codes.
Hmm.
So what ways do you think QR codes can streamline the check-in process, and can it sort of mitigate any problems? Is there anything you particularly want to highlight regarding QR codes?
Yeah, I like QR codes actually. I think QR codes is one of the best. It's one of those middle grounds where it's not too much of an aggressive change, or it's not pushing too much technology on people, but it's also not the archaic way of like walking up to a registration desk, telling them your last name and them having a pre-printed badge and they hand it to you. Like, it's a little bit better than that. What I appreciate about the QR code is it gives people the opportunity to make changes to their registration, whether it be their name, their title, the company they work for. I can't tell you how many times I've overheard someone say, "Hey, you spelled my name wrong. Can you please pre-print this?" And the person at the kiosk has to say, "Okay, well, I have to have my team print it. So come back in about 20 minutes." A QR code and a printer gives people the ability to scan their QR code, look at all their information on the screen, make sure it's accurate, and then print. So it's a lot more sustainable because you're not wasting paper. You're getting it right the first time when it comes out of the printer, which is great. I really am a fan of QR codes, and I think that is a great way to adopt new technology without being too aggressive with things like facial recognition and things like that.
Well, of course, the other benefit of QR codes on your badge is that if there is an app for the event,
Mm-hmm.
that means attendees can scan each other, which is a really good thing, providing the app's actually working, because I've been to a few events where the app not worked at all. So yeah, again, it's another benefit of QR codes.
It creates connectivity for sure. It creates connectivity from the moment you check in to when you start at that networking reception and you start to visit all those booths, whether it be lead scanning or, it's a new way of exchanging information without having to use business cards. So QR codes can accomplish many things. And like I said, it definitely leans more into the sustainability place, which I think everyone should be thinking along the lines of sustainability today.
And it's more or less proven technology.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as though we've now got to sort of fiddle around with facial recognition and get the cameras right and the software right. We could do the QR scan with a phone, with a wand, it just works.
It's less invasive as well. I think it's less invasive for those people that are not yet ready to take it there.
For people who are of a sensitive nature, whether because of their own mental health issues or it's just they're an introvert or something, there has been an introduction of like self-service machines. You stand at the machine, your badge is scanned. If you've got an email with your QR code, it's scanned. Out pops a badge, you go into the event. Does that lose anything? I mean, you're not talking to a human before you go into the event. The hospitality side of things, something?
Absolutely. I think that's another sensitive topic when it comes to introducing technology at events. You don't want to lose the humanistic side of events. That's why we do what we do. It's to create human face-to-face interactions. So you don't want to lose that by introducing too much technology to a point where you're not speaking to anyone when you first arrive at the event. You're not being welcomed or greeted by anyone. You're literally walking up to a computer, putting in all your information, collecting your information, walking off, and I'll see you at the welcome reception, right? It's a little cold. And so I think that we have to find a way to keep things warm when it comes to that first touch point. Because again, check-in registration is a first touch point for your event experience. And you only get that opportunity once to impress someone once when it comes to your event. So you want to make sure that that experience is still warm. You want to make sure that there's still a humanistic side to that experience. The second part to it is you don't want to alienate anyone. So when you think of like accessibility, people that may, need accessible features for check-in, some of them can't use a computer. They can't access a computer for many reasons. They could be vision impaired. They could be physically impaired where they can't use those tools or those resources in the same way the average person can. And so having that person there to still greet them and help them and introduce them to this level of hospitality upon arrival is equally important for those people as well. So I caution people to not go down this path of like iRobot too quickly, right? We still want to make sure that we are protecting what we all love about events, which is the human to human, face to face interaction. And that should still start at that check-in experience.
But we shouldn't abandon the self-check-ins. There are people who are, and forgive me if I get these terms wrong, but if you're of a neurodivergent nature where you find human interaction difficult, and for some people just turning up at the event is a challenge enough, then having these machines available, you're helping a small percentage of your audience, your attendees. But at the same time, you still need the human touch. For example, if you've gone to a hotel, the fact that you've been warmly welcomed by the receptionist or the staff, you remember that. And you're more than happy to go back to there again because you know that you're going to be warmly welcomed. You enjoyed that. And same should also apply to your event.
Yeah, listen, we all have those introverts. I'm an introvert, believe it or not. I am naturally an introvert. And so we all have those people who really don't care to have someone greet them and welcome them to an event. They're totally fine with walking up to a kiosk, printing out their name badge and going about their day. That's okay. We should continue to give those people the space to do that. But we also don't want to alienate the people who do need that assistance because they are somewhat impaired in some way, shape, or form, or those people who do want that soft touch. So we just have to find that healthy balance.
I was going to discuss about data retention and data processing by third parties, but I've got a feeling we've already touched on that and maybe covered it well enough. I don't know if there's anything else you want to say about that.
No. Again, just, planners and organizers have to stay up to speed on the industry, making sure that they're compliant with whatever regulations apply for their local country or city or state, and just make sure that they are always compliant and giving their attendees that level of comfort. That's all.
So you're an event planner and you're planning to use some sort of tech to help your attendees feel more comfortable coming into the event. What kind of advice do you have to help them incorporate these new technologies for the first time? What advice do you have to make it a smooth transition from the traditional to using something new?
Well, first and foremost, I would say understand your audience and make sure it's what they want, and make sure that it will really improve the experience versus make the experience more stressful or more annoying. You may feel like you need to stay up to speed on the industry trends, and you want to feel innovative and you want to make sure your event is innovative, but your audience may not be ready for that. So that goes back to what I said before, which is crawl, walk, run. Do some test and trying of different tools and different innovations. Introduce things on a slow, small scale, not necessarily culture shock where one year you had badges being given out at the desk based off of last name, but next year you have a robot giving out badges. Like you don't want to change things too drastically. So first and foremost, know your audience, know your demographic. Second part to it, I would say, is once you decide that, okay, I want to introduce something new to this event, I want the check-in experience to be something new at my event, I want to elevate the experience, make sure you're casting a really good RFP. You have a very thorough RFP process. Check any and every provider that you can, check any and every solution that you can, and make sure that it's a thorough check. Not only just pricing and product, but going back to the compliance and the data retention and disposing of data, just making sure that you are really leaning into your vendors who are the subject matter experts, asking the right questions, getting multiple proposals, and making sure that you're just doing thorough work so that you're partnering with the right vendors that really speak to your event and speak to your audience and can give them a great experience. And then the last thing I would say is making sure that you're providing visibility and clarity around that data retention and why you're making these changes. Make sure that you have thorough communications to your attendees as to why they're now seeing, face recognition at the event, and why they're now seeing QR code scanning. Make sure that you're able to tell the story as to why you're making these changes, whether it be we want to be more sustainable, whether it be we want to give you guys a little bit more of a self check-in experience. There's always a story behind what you're doing, and you can turn it into a positive, but you have to make sure that narrative is clear and that it's communicated to your attendees, and you want to make sure that you're communicating to your attendees what's happening with that data after the fact. Again, it's nice and it's beautiful and it's fun and it's cool, but people are concerned with what we are doing with their information.
Yeah, I think the key thing is manage expectations. If you are going to introducing something new, tell your attendees so they're not shocked by it when they turn up. If you are going suddenly using QR codes, well, do communicate that well before the event so everybody knows what you're supposed to be doing, not just a random email that says, here's your code.
Yeah, you want to make it a good thing. You want to make it a good thing, and you want to build trust with your attendees. And as long as you communicate and you make it a good thing and you build trust with them, it's going to be received exceptionally well. But you have to do the work in making sure that it's communicated effectively.
Okay, so nothing stands still for long, does it? We've got AI coming down the line. We've got all these exciting new technologies coming down. What do you think? What do you think is going to be the next big thing to not just hit the event industry as such, but I mean, there's so much coming in that's going to enhance the attendee check-in experience and everything else that happens after that.
I would say just keep your eyes open and slow and steady. It's very easy to get caught up in all the different trends and innovations that are being thrown our way, especially AI. I personally am tired of hearing about AI.
Oh, yeah.
I'm almost like, just let me know when it's ready, when it's clean and checked and client, like just let me know when all that stuff's done. But I would just say keep your eyes open and just remember to protect the humanistic side of events. We don't want events to turn into so much automation that the humanistic side of it is lost. People still enjoy connecting with humans in human ways. And so if we get too caught up in technology and we start to introduce too much technology, we do lose the essence of humans. And so I want to make sure that we're not losing that. I think as event professionals, that's part of our job, is to protect the humanistic side of events. And I know I keep using that word, but that's because I'm very passionate about that. I'm all about technology. I'm one of those guys that has every Apple product in the world. I'm always, jumping at the new iPhone or jumping at the new pair of headphones. Like, I'm totally all about technology, but I'm also very, very much the person that when I walk into the Apple store, I want to see a human being, right? And so I like the human to human interaction, and I want to make sure that we are not moving too fast to a point where there's like this shock across the industry that we can't fix, or that turns into being more harm than good. And just because you could doesn't mean you should, right? Just because something is out there and just because something's been introduced or just because there's this new tool out there, it doesn't mean that you have to jump at it, the first day that it's released. Give it time to work its way through the industry, see some use cases, see some other, more capable companies that, can take that risk, see how they manage to use it, and then see how it applies to your business. But, just keep your eyes open and do everything in good moderation.
Yeah, totally. I have noticed that the word or the letters AI is being sort of sellotaped onto everything. It probably isn't AI, it's machine learning. And I have a beef about that, but that's for another time. But yeah, we're seeing AI slapped onto everything. So when it comes to choosing your solutions, your tech solutions, just be aware of what that term actually means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what it means and how does it apply to your business and how does it apply to your event? Because it may not apply. AI may not have a space in your event yet, right? So again, it's not a matter of I want to do this because everyone else is doing it. It's I want to do this because it's going to improve my event experience. It's going to make my event experience safer. It's going to contribute to sustainability. It's going to make my event more accessible by different walks of nature. And so you want to make sure that there is a benefit to what you're introducing and you're not doing it just to do it. And I trust that the people in our industry are smart enough to know that, but sometimes you have to say it. So
yeah, you do. QR codes are very mature technology. They've been around for a long time. AI has, while it's great to have an interest, research it, see how can it apply, I think we've got a while yet before it really matures into solutions that we could be using.
And again, I said this before, you have to really know your audience, know your event. Dreamforce is an event that probably can benefit from expedited check-in and AI and QR codes and self-check-in kiosks just because of the volume, the amount of people that are there. But then you have a small event of like 250 people. Do you really want to jeopardize or take out the hospitality or the humanistic touch for an event that's only 200 people? You have to ask yourselves, like, does this really matter at this type of event? Is this something that's really going to move the needle forward at this type of event? Is this going to really increase my satisfaction scores or my event survey responses by exponential amount if I introduce QR codes or if I introduce a self-check-in, right? You have to ask yourself these questions. It may not be worth it, and sometimes it is.
Yeah. Again, if you've got a small event, 200, 250 people, investment in AI may not actually be justified. And instead, hire a couple of extra people and just keep the human element. Okay, so as I keep saying, technology is changing everything, and the nature of technology keeps changing. We've gone from QR codes to AI to whatever's coming next. Can you future-proof your strategies? How can you keep taking into account all the changes that are happening?
Yeah, I don't. Before I answer this question, I just want to say to everyone, I do see the questions in the chat. We do see them, but we're saving the questions for the end. So I don't want anyone in the chat to think we're ignoring you guys. We definitely see your questions. We're going to get to your questions.
Sadly, I'm not seeing any questions at the moment, but I'm sure that's a minor technical thing.
Yeah,
at least you can see them. That's cool.
Yeah,
we will get to questions. Don't worry, people.
Yeah, I'll help us read through them. But to answer your question, you can't really future-proof your strategy. We may never be able to keep up with the speed of how things are being launched. Trends are always going to be introduced. My advice to all of my fellow planners is to stay curious, always leave room for something new, evaluate the opportunities, make informed decisions, but always stay curious and open, because if you don't want to fall too far behind the curve, you don't want to fall too far behind the trends. And I've seen some events where it's like, okay, I get it, but you guys are like borderline archaic. So I've seen some of those,
Yeah.
but you also don't want to be the first at everything. You have to leave yours, because when you do that, when you're the first at everything, or when you're jumping at every opportunity, you leave yourself in a very, very vulnerable place. And that may be too risky for your event and for the reputation of your event, to always leave yourself in a very vulnerable place. So you have to find that healthy middle ground between being curious and wanting to try new things, but also protecting the integrity and the reputation of your event. And so my advice is, no, you probably can't future-proof everything, but I would say you can make very informed and educated decisions based off of research, based off of data, based off of use cases, based off of connecting with other planners and hearing their experience using similar technology, based off of brushing up your skills around compliance and security, just making sure that you can make informed decisions, but always stay curious and always stay open to new things and new innovations. That's the way to go, in my opinion.
The thing is, if you're consistently an early adopter, so you're always getting the latest shiny thing because you're going to be the first, I don't think it does anything good for your bank balance.
Right.
I mean, it's a very expensive thing to be doing all the time. I mean, you're an Apple fan, so I can imagine that, it must be very expensive to always get the very latest iPhone, the very latest earbuds, the very latest whatever it is they're offering. Fantastic equipment. Don't get me wrong. It's lovely to look at. I'm sure it's lovely to have, but it's not cheap.
Yeah, and I do my research, right? Like if a new iPhone comes out, I definitely do my comparison between what I have and what they've just released. And I look at the features and I watch videos on YouTube, and I spend hours doing research to make sure that if I do decide to get this new iPhone or this new iPad, that it's a drastic difference from what I have now, and that it's really going to improve my way of life and not just be me spending extra money. So that same mindset should be applied to your events business. And I call it a business because we all in many ways are running a business as planners, right? You need to make sure that whatever technology you're introducing, again, it's going to have a positive impact on the experience. It's going to contribute to the return of the event. It's going to yield great results. You want to make sure that it's going to be a positive and not a negative.
Is there one takeaway you have from all of this that you want to share?
It's exciting. The future of events and technology and the innovations that are coming our way, even AI, it is exciting. It's very exciting. I have a lot to learn, or I'm continuing to learn a lot around how these technologies can best improve the attendee experience and how I can best protect my attendees from a compliance and regulatory standpoint. And it's a wonderful time to be in the events industry, because more than ever, I think post-COVID, people are realizing the importance of face-to-face interactions through events. And so it's a great time to be in the industry. And with that, a lot of technology companies are tapping into the events world and realizing, hey, this is an entire space that we have an opportunity to do some great work. And so it's just an exciting time to be part of the industry. But in order for me to be a great contributor to the industry, I need to make sure I'm staying up to speed on what's going on, and that I have the knowledge and the wherewithals to make great decisions, not only for my career, but also for my organization. So that's my takeaway, is to be excited, stay curious, brush up on your skills, stay ahead of the curve, and have fun with it.
Great. Yeah. I mean, stay curious for me is the thing.
Yeah.
Because as we've discussed, it changes so quickly. So you have to be curious about what's new, but it doesn't mean to say that you actually have to go buy it and implement it straight away. Okay, well, I think that's enough from me for the minute. Enough of my questions. We now need to hand it over to the audience and see what the audience has to ask. Again, I'm afraid I can't see questions at the moment. So if you would like to choose a question that you would like to answer.
Yeah, let me take a look and see. There was one here about scalability. So one person asked, in terms of scalability, how well do these advanced technologies adapt to different event sizes?
Who's that being asked by?
I can't see names. I only see initials. The initials are LA. Thank you for your question. I think most technology providers are well aware that one of the most important aspects to their business is variety and having products and technologies that can appeal to different types of events. Yeah. I have not run into company that has not been able to deliver a suite of products across multiple types of events, whether it be 50 people, 500 people, 5,000. I think most of these companies, as they continue to grow and develop their product roadmaps, they're always thinking about scalability and making sure that their products can apply to different size of events. And the reason being is because they make their money based off, most of these companies make their money based off of number of users or number of registrants or whatever the case may be. So
Yeah.
it behooves of them to not make sure that they can appeal to big numbers, because that's how they make their money.
That's an important point. If you are investing in some kind of registration tech or some sort of attendee registration system, knowing that it's scalable between a couple of hundred people to a couple of thousand people means your investment is kind of like a good one. What's next?
There's another question here from EG. It says, are there specific industries or types of events where certain access management technologies are more suitable? I think concerts, sporting events, anything along those lines, any kind of entertainment type event are definitely benefits from access management, without a doubt. I mean, we see it when we go to different events. We see it even when we go to the airport. I mean, I know that's a whole different beast that, kind of is like on its own lane, but I definitely think like entertainment venues and things of that sort definitely benefit from access management technologies. I think corporate events, not so much. We don't necessarily have a need for such a high level of security and access management. Most of the time for corporate events, it's invite only. So people who are there because they're invited and they should be there. But when you really need to make sure that you're filtering through who should be there, who shouldn't be there, whether it be through tickets, whether it be through, qualification criteria, whatever the case may be, if there needs to be some sort of check and balance to make sure people that are coming in should be there, then these access management technologies are definitely helpful, and they do help. They do expedite the process, and they do give planners a certain level of comfort because of the level of security that they provide. I would say that my response to that is more along I'm trying to think of the right word to use when you think of these types of events, but more like open to the public or open to the general public type events. Those are the ones I think benefit.
This is something I was just going to bring up, because when you're doing, may not be facial recognition, but QR codes would certainly allow for a large mass of people to move quickly through the entry process to an event. So if you're talking about a concert or a venue with lots of people, sporting events, scan the QR code, move along, because you don't want to have a slow process blocking the entry for thousands of people.
Which we've all seen that. We've all been to events, I'm sure, where they either have a little handheld tablet or whatever the case may be, where they scan and you keep moving, right? But we also have to remember there's two different types of experience we're talking about. We're talking about like ticketed events where we need to make sure that there's access control because there are people that paid and then people that didn't pay, right? So there's people that should be there and people that shouldn't be there. And then you have events where we know everyone that's here should be here. It's more of a matter of like, get your right of access, which is your name badge, right? And get your land and things of that sort. So there's two different experiences or two different needs that we're talking about here. But I will say that the should you be here or should you not be here, did you pay or did you not pay, those types of experiences are the ones that I think will always adopt this technology a lot quicker. A, because they have the budget to do so, but B, because they just need it. They need it to make sure that the experience of getting to an event on time, making sure that the right people are there, all those things have to happen because it's a domino effect, right? If you have a long line of people going to Madison Square Garden to see a concert and you don't have a quick way of them getting in and getting seated, it impacts the start time of the concert and everything. It's a whole logistical nightmare. So they have much more of a need for these types of technologies where the invite only corporate events, just get your name badge and your lanyard type events, we're not there yet. We're okay with where we are right now. I think doesn't mean we're not open to new technologies and new ways of doing it, but I think we're kind of okay, at least to me.
But it's important to make that separation between paying public turning up for something, or if it's an in-house corporate event. Different needs, different solutions, but still need to look at the tech and see how you solve your problem. So any other questions?
Yeah, I'll keep going. How do these access management technologies integrate with hybrid event models to accommodate both in-person and remote attendees? Yeah, I think, I'm not sure if this question really, everything that we've talked about on this call or on this webinar, I think it really applies to more in-person experiences. I think when you start to get into virtual and hybrid, it's a little different. Hybrid or virtual, you type in some credentials, you have access to the virtual platform, right? I think it's very cut and clear, but I think in person is where you have to have a little bit more of a gated experience.
Yeah.
I think it's very different. So I won't spend too much time on that question, but I hope I answer your question.
So, if you're doing a virtual event, you will have a specialized URL where what we're really talking about is the check-in experience for something that you're turning up to. But it's a good question, though. Thank you for the question, whoever asked that.
This is a good one because I'm such a champion of DEI. How do event organizers ensure inclusivity in access management technologies, considering diverse demographics and potential variations in technology adoption among attendees? This goes back to knowing your audience.
Actually, it also goes into facial recognition because some systems don't recognize skin color, correctly or not accurately. Anyway,
and so these are the things that we have to think about, and these are the questions you should be asking your vendors when you're in your RFP process, is around the different capabilities of their products or their solutions and the variations of their products and their solutions. And it's not just the physicality, right? It's also language. Are people going to be able to understand instructions and how the technology may speak to them? Is it able to do it in different languages? If you have an international event where you have people coming from around the world, will this technology work everyone that attends? Is there going to be a feature where if I'm coming from, Spain, that I can tap Spanish, or if I'm coming from, China, that I can tap Mandarin, or, whatever the case may be. So there's all these things that you have to ask your vendors when you're going down this path of trying to consider new technologies, to make sure, again, to my point in the very beginning, you don't want to alienate anyone. You don't want people to feel like they can't take advantage of this new technology or experience this new technology, as cool and as amazing as it looks, but they can't partake because they don't speak English, or because their skin is not the right color, or because there's different cultural things that they wear that may skew the information or skew the digital recognition or the facial recognition. These are all things that you have to keep into consideration, because inclusivity will always matter. And be very clear about that. Inclusivity will always matter, and you never want someone to come to your event and feel like they are not included. That's a horrible feeling that you never want anyone to walk away from your event feeling.
I would like to point out that inclusivity is very important, not just for the multicultural aspects, but can we also remember that people may have hearing difficulties?
Exactly.
You might be in a wheelchair or just have general mobility. So make sure your check-in, not only have you got the good technology they're using to make it seamless, but you have access for people who find movement difficult, or have hearing impairment and may not be able to hear you at all. I went to one event where they didn't have any carpeting because they were trying to be sustainable. However, that meant when the stages were active, then had music playing, the sound just bounced around. And one particular deaf person had extreme problems hearing because of all the echo and because of reverberation. So it made it very, very difficult for them.
There are two questions that stood out to me, so I'm going to see if I can get to these ones. Can you share a success story or case study where the implementation of cutting-edge access management technologies significantly improved the overall event experience for both the organizers and the attendees? Yeah, I mean, I can use one of my own examples, going back to the large conference that I once upon a time used to host for over 2,000 people. Believe it or not, before I joined this organization, the arrival experience was literally pre-printing name badges, stuffing them in name badge holders. And then as people would come to the registration desk to check in, we would find their name badge and give it to them. And again, you'd go down this path of, you spelled my name wrong, you don't have my designations right, yada, yada, yada. We introduced digital check-in, which was pretty much the kiosk where they would walk up, scan the QR code that they got when they got their registration confirmation, or they can just tap in their last name. It would find their name. They'd be able to review all their information, make any corrections, and then print their own name badge. The reason why this was such a success for us is A, it saved us time, energy, and resources on having to reprint name badges if there was an error. B, it gave the attendees the feeling that we have elevated the arrival or the check-in experience because it was more technologically savvy. It was more technology, and it gave them more autonomy in making corrections. And if they wanted to go by Barb instead of Barbara, they can make that change. But also from a reporting standpoint, it allowed us to real time see how many people have checked in versus how many people have not. Where before we didn't have that technology, so we were having to count name badges to see, okay, we've got 100 people left, 200 people left. So this technology on the back end, on my iPad, I can literally pull up a report, or a dashboard, I should say, and see in real time how many people checked in, how many people have not, how many people are we anticipating to check in within the next hour, the next 2 hours. So from a staffing perspective, I was able to shift my staffing to say, hey, instead of having 3 people at the kiosk, we can have 2 because it's going to be quiet for the next hour. So that's a very good example of technology that has really helped me personally in that job helped with that conference and making sure that it was a seamless experience, not only for the attendees, but also a great resource for me and my team.
I can imagine that for the marketing, seeing how effective it was by
Yeah.
saying, well, 90% of people turned up. Oh, we did well then. It worked. It's all that feedback that you can pass up the corporate ladder to those who are in charge of the money. Yeah,
Yep.
they'd probably love to see that. So next one.
From SJ, are there specific industries or event types where a particular check-in technology is currently dominating? Again, sporting events, concerts, any of them that use Clear, I think has been great. Clear, some of us may have our opinions of Clear at the airport because sometimes Clear, the line is longer than TSA pre-check. But at sporting arenas and any kind of entertainment type venue, I've seen Clear work really, really well. And so I think they're doing a really great job. I do see the digital facial recognition becoming a lot more popular. And again, from my experience at the airport, again, the airport is a different beast, I get it. But my experience at the airport, if it's anything like the experience that I would have at any kind of event outside of the airport, I would say the digital facial recognition is probably going to gain steam very, very quickly. But those are the two industries that I see have been adopting technology very, very well. Again, corporate events, I think we're still figuring it out. There are some corporate events I've seen do like the QR code scanning and things of that sort, which it works perfectly fine. I have not seen a lot of industry events or corporate events that are stuck in the archaic way of pre-printing name badges and finding your name, and that I've seen go away, which is great. But I also have not seen corporate events or industry events go as far as like digital facial recognition or anything like that yet. So I think we're still trying to figure that out. But larger industry events like sports, entertainment, concerts, things of that sort, I've been seeing the facial recognition and Clear working very, very well. Do we have time?
It's all going very well. How are we doing for questions? How many more do you think we've got left?
We've got about 2 more. I think we can make it.
Make it to the full hour.
The increasing reliance on mobile apps for check-ins. What strategies are in place to handle potential technical glitches or connectivity issues that attendees might face? Most of these apps or most of these experiences rely on Wi-Fi. And so making sure that you partner with your production team on having a very strong wireless connection or Wi-Fi or wireless router is very important, and having backups. You need to make sure that you have multiple routers to make sure that if one router goes out or if the connection is slow on one router, that it can bounce to the next, and that there's no gap and there's no break in the connection. But the reality of it is that all of these apps, all of these technologies rely on some sort of internet, and so you need to make sure that you have a strong internet connection. What I will say is not only having strong wireless internet, that's usually for your users or your attendees, your back of the house dashboards and systems that you're using to run this technology and make sure this technology is running smoothly should try to have some sort of Ethernet or landline connection. It's a little bit more secure, it's stronger, it's faster. And so just working with your audiovisual team to make sure that those two types of connections are strong and that you have backups and even more backups.
Depending on the backup.
Depending on the size of your event, right? Depending on the size of your event, like a Google Next, they're going to have like 20 backups, right? It just makes sense for that caliber of an event and that many people. Assessing the investment versus the return and making sure that what you're investing makes sense for the size of audience and what you're introducing from a technology standpoint. You just got to, make sure it's balanced to make sure it makes sense.
I'm pretty sure app developers must be fairly sensitive by now to Wi-Fi dropouts. I mean, that's a thing they probably are already building in, and the underlying operating system is already probably taking that into account. So yes, it is of a concern, but if you have a good provider and they work with you and you test, you should be okay.
And excuse me, most of these providers have a fallback plan. If the internet does go out, there's more of a manual option to make sure that people can still check in, people can still arrive, people can still get their access, even if there is no internet connection. And that's one of the benefits of QR codes. If you have a QR code, you don't necessarily need to have internet to access that QR code. You can take a screenshot. In some cases, you can take a screenshot of it, or you can pull up that email from a week ago because it's still in your inbox. And so it's not a matter of like making sure your attendees have internet. It's just a matter of making sure your systems have internet. So, most of these providers have some sort of manual backup option. And again, as you go through your RFP process and you're vetting all of these different providers and trying to pick the right solution for what you need, these are the questions you want to ask. What is your backup plan in case the internet goes out? What is your backup plan in case power goes out? What is your manual registration or your manual check-in process look like? These are all questions that you want to make sure you ask.
Yeah. Work with your vendors. If you're working with a good reputable vendor, especially for the Wi-Fi. They already know the good venue and the bad venue. They already know what to do. So work with them, learn from them, and ask questions.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Those are all the questions, I think. Unless anyone else has any other questions, feel free to drop it in the chat. I think we have just a few more minutes, but those are all the questions, I think.
Excellent. There's some very, very good questions in there. Brilliant. So let's bring it to a close then. Was there anything else you want to say? Are there other comments you want to make?
No. Like I said, I mean, I think it's an exciting time to be in events. I think our industry is going to be growing exponentially over the next few years just because corporations are finding that events is not an off the side of your desk job, and there's more demand for it now more than ever. And I think that's across all industries. You're finding so many different industries now posting jobs for event planners, event specialists, because they're realizing, okay, this is an important marketing channel for us. This is an important engagement channel for us. This is just an important space that we need to take a little bit more seriously. And so I think when you think of technology and innovation and how that all applies to the different attendee check-in experiences across all industries, we all have to get a little bit more savvy around the different options that are available to us, how that applies to our audience, how that applies to our company, our industry, what knowledge we need to have around compliance, regulatory restrictions, security, data retention, disposing of data, all of that information we need to become experts at. And then we need to make sure that we're continuously advocating for the humanistic side of events. I want to see events continue to thrive. I want to see technology continue to find its space within events. I want to see us continue to be innovative and at the cutting edge of technology. But I also want to make sure that we are protecting human face-to-face interactions. And so I don't want to lose that. I'm a hospitality nerd at my heart. That's where I started. I started in hospitality. So I always will have a soft spot for that side of events, people to people. That's always going to be something that I want to make sure that we protect. So that would be my takeaway is, stay curious, stay excited, be excited, be proud of the industry you work for. We're going in the right way, in the right direction, but also remember that people are relying on you to protect our space as far as human to human, face-to-face interactions.
Well, I think we can now bring this to a close. So, Tavar, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
This has been a really, really good session. Really enjoyed the questions and the answers, and obviously we've got some great questions from the audience. So yeah, thank you for being present. Thank you to Eventcombo for putting this together. Do check out Eventcombo's tech-powered innovative check-in solutions. And of course, find out about more Riskified and Tavar. You'll find him on LinkedIn.
Yeah, just follow, type my name in LinkedIn. There's only one of me.
Yeah.
You'll find me. And I'm happy to connect with anyone on LinkedIn and continue the conversation. And as you can see, I love to talk about this stuff. So if there's any question that you had that I wasn't able to answer, just feel free to reach out.
So, and lastly, of course, thank you to all the people who have come to watch, come to listen, come to learn. Thank you for the questions. Yeah, big thank you to the audience. Thank you, Tavar, again. Thank you, Eventcombo. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much both for this informative discussions, both Tavar and Bob. And thank for the audience who was joining us.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
So any idea on audience figures?
Yeah, we shall share that to you in the mail. So we are live at it. So we can end the meet and I'll get back to you via email.